Thanks for tuning in to Stay Sharp with Razorleaf, your secret weapon for all things digital in products and manufacturing. When you are told that you need to talk to a salesperson, do you react negatively? If you do, then you're not alone. Why do salespeople get such a bad rap? In this episode, Jonathan and Jen partner up with Derek Neiding once again to debunk the issues around salespeople. They recommend the ways to think about working with them and how you can leverage their resources to get your questions answered, and what kinds of things you can expect from them. They are an ally and a partner when you know the best way to work with them. Let's listen in.
Welcome back, everybody, to Stay Sharp, the podcast from Razorleaf on all things digital related to engineering and manufacturing. And we're back again with my co-host, Jen Farello. I'm Jonathan Scott. Jen, welcome back. We're here again, doing it again. And we have a guest with us again. We've had Derek a couple of times on the show, so welcome, Derek Neiding.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yep. For those of you that may not have heard other episodes with Derek, Derek is the Vice President for Sales at Razorleaf. And Derek's been with the company since day one. He was employee number 1 or 2, however you want to count it.
CEO plus employee.
Right. And you've done a number of things. Just a quick summary on your background. You've been in the engineering world. You've done design work. You've done implementation and service work in the PDM and PLM space. You've written code. You've managed projects. You've done all sorts of things. And these days, you spend your time talking with customers, working with a team of sales professionals, working with partners, doing that sort of thing, but still here in this PLM and consulting and digital engineering and manufacturing space. Did I miss anything important, Derek?
No, I think that sounds like the right summary.
Okay. And we're glad to have you as a guest today, because the topic we want to dig into is the role of sales professionals in this space, in the digital engineering and manufacturing space. So for people out there trying to build solutions, trying to use technology to solve problems, people trying to, advance their business or transform their business related to digital products, what role do sales professionals play? What role can they play? What are some of the things that you want to look out for when maybe you run into a salesperson who you wouldn't call a sales professional, that kind of thing. But I want to talk about this topic because I think this is important to people achieving their goals in this space. And it's something that's sometimes overlooked. Salespeople can be often maligned, a lot of bad stereotypes about it, that kind of thing. And I think it's worth digging into because, Derek, I know you've got some very specific experiences in this space and perspectives on it. And Jen, I think you do too. And it'll be good for us to dig into it and talk about the subject. So that's what I have in mind, right, in terms of the topic. Jen, anything you want to add in terms of what we want to get to today?
No, I think that's a good way to. It's a good place to start. I think the best place to start might be actually because you and I had talked about this when we came up with the topic is why do salespeople get such a bad rap to begin with?
Yeah,
because they do, right? And it's not just from the customer side. You can speak from experience. Sometimes the product and services people aren't all that happy with the salespepeople either. Nobody likes us.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely,
which is a damn shame because we are all such wonderful people.
No, let's start there, right? I'll kick that off. And Derek, you've seen this you've seen this from all sides, right? But I'll kick this off and say I have certainly seen that inside an organization. There are lots of technical people, and I saw this when I was an engineer. I've seen this on the services side, doing PLM consulting, that people inside the delivery part of an organization can get frustrated with salespeople because they think they overpromise, they overcommit, and they set the relationship up for failure and that kind of thing. I mean, I know what you're talking about, Jen. I think it's an unfortunate stereotype. I'm sure it happens, which is the basis for probably that stereotype. But I've seen that. I mean, Derek, what do you see?
Yeah, and it's it's not just in our industry. It's salespeople in a lot of industries. They sometimes get the reputation that they're coin operated. So,
Right.
Oh, I hate that term. I hate
I'm
that
I'm just here to try to get to a PO and a close, and that's it. That's all that matters. And if your project is big enough to warrant my attention, but if it's not, I don't really care. If there's no money to be had, we don't need to talk. That can be the reputation that they sometimes get. And to your point, Jonathan, some of that may not be unfair. There may be individuals that are like that. That's not the sort of salespeople that any of us like to work with. But that reputation is not uncommon. I mean, early in my career, I thought the sales guys had a very important job, a very specific job, and it was to make sure that there were donuts at the meeting. Put the donuts on the conference table and step aside. That was their job. There was no other value that salesperson brought to the meeting. And I thought of that when I was in the engineering space, in industry, and I was working with salespeople. I thought that when I moved into the consulting side and was on the technical side working with salespeople, I continued to think that until I started working with some true sales professionals and went to meetings with them and saw what value they brought. I'm like, there's something important that guy's doing. And, this was long after he set the donuts down, and I still saw that there was important things that he was doing.
I want to add in just some basic facts, because I learned something that surprised me about sales in our space. I thought that the way sales operated, the typical model for salespeople, was pretty universal. And I've since learned that it's actually not. So I want to clarify something, what you brought up about coin operated. So for listeners that may not be familiar with how compensation works for salespeople in this industry, there are multiple models, but the one that's prevalent that leads to some of what you were talking about is a commission-based model where salespeople are compensated and incented based on how much they sell. And that can lead to that coin-operated sense of, they don't really care whether it's a fit or not, because their paycheck depends on whether I buy or not. They're trying to get me to buy it, right? And we've seen that. That's not unique to this industry. We've seen it with appliances at Home Depot or those kinds of places. But a lot of people, I say globally, that I've talked to about this topic and this concern and where do salespeople fit in the overall ecosystem, are surprised at sometimes the attitudes in, I'll say, the US, and maybe it's in other markets, because they didn't realize that that's how the compensation model works. So I wanted to just get that on the table, because it's not universal in the way that 15 years ago I thought it was. I thought that's just how sales always worked, but it's not universal, right?
Right. Yeah, and it doesn't, and we can get into this as we get into our discussion, that doesn't have to be a bad thing. The fact that the sales guy is motivated by closing the deal, by getting the PO, certainly that's going to drive him to towards the business goals that the business has. But it also will drive him to the goals that the customer has. And what I mean by that is, for example, in our organization, I know this is true of a lot of organizations that are similar to us that sell services, is while our sales guy may get to check the box when he closes the deal, he doesn't start receiving any compensation until we actually do work, start hitting milestones, and start meeting deliverables. And if that doesn't happen, if he undersold the project, if he oversold the project, if he sold a project that we really can't execute on, that we can't do in the budget, that he's not going to get the compensation that he was anticipating. So he doesn't get to just walk away when the deal has been closed. It may be, depending on the size of the project, his compensation may be a year and a half out before he realizes that. And so he needs to stay invested, and that causes him also to think about making sure that what we're offering is something that we can actually do and we can do well.
Yep.
Well, and I think you're right. It's so there's two things about that, right? The coin operated, the commission structure, like that does help from a certain standpoint of like helps you prioritize, deals that are going to close, deals that you have the opportunity to like service well, that sort of thing. Like, so it's one consideration, but, and certainly in a services organization, it is understood it's a much longer relationship to begin with. Derek, to your point that you're not getting commission, you're not getting your those bumps in your pay unless we're delivering. And that's truer of a service organization than it is a product organization. But that's not to say product organizations don't have that same long-term focus, because it's, what's the lowest cost of sale is to an existing customer.
Right.
And you know what? If that customer is not going to buy anything more from you if you screwed them the first time, or if you sold it and walked away.
And there are product organizations who have commission models where, there's some baseline that's established for the sales guy. And if he has customer churn, so he's selling a product, but if he has customer churn, that affects his future sales because his baseline is here and he lost some customers. And so even though the product sale is done, the commission has been paid, there is a necessity for him to maintain a happy customer so that they stay on the platform, they stay using the software so that it doesn't impact him in the future. And I think that most organizations have some sort of commission structure, incentive structure that generally is making the salesperson think about long term. I mean, why wouldn't you, right? Jen, to your point, the easiest sale is the sale to someone that we already know, we have an established relationship with, they're already our customer. So every organization knows that those are the people we want to keep happy, and we want to have them give us future opportunities. And so the commission plans, the compensation plans that organizations put together tend to focus on that and tend to make sure that is something that the sales guy's thinking about.
I think that's an important clarification about that this coin-operated concept, right? Because the coin-operated has that negative connotation of a salesperson's only here to get paid for this thing, and then they're moving on, and they're not really here to help me. And compensation structures vary. I mean, I'm coin-operated, right? I mean,
all of us are coin-operated.
Right. I mean, that's the point. That's what I wanted to get to is, it is not a bad thing for each of us as professionals to have motivations for what we do. And it's nice when we've got some altruistic ones and some, working for the greater good ones. But we're also going to have some that are our own personal interest and compensation.
Yeah.
It's what's important is to understand the difference between, there's good models of that and bad models of that. And you just you can't assume everybody has a bad model.
Yeah. And I ask people to think about when they think of their technology salesperson, their software salesperson, their services salesperson, and they get a little bit, anxious, and I'm not happy about dealing with salespeople. I ask them to think about their organization. So, you make aftermarket car parts. Your organization has salespeople, and those salespeople have a responsibility to represent your product to people, to hear what's going on in the industry and where your competitors are maybe beating you, and bring that back to the company so that the company can address it, change their direction, that sort of thing. And so salespeople aren't bad. They're a necessity. Now, are there bad salespeople? Yeah, there are. And we should talk about how you identify them and what you do when you run into them. But don't just lump everybody together. Sales is a profession that is necessary in almost, every industry and every product that's out there. And there are ways to take advantage of that and to get the most out of it.
But I think that's... go ahead, Jen.
I was going to say, I think the real difference when we're talking about what your stereotypical salesperson and a sales professional is understanding their own value to the organization and to the customer. So if I think my only value is to close a deal and bring money in, then I'm not a sales professional. But if I recognize the fact that no, my value to the customer is to bring them my industry knowledge, my breadth of experience, my connections to our relationship, and to help them solve their problem. And conversely, my value to my organization is to represent the product service fairly and protect my technical resources. Now I'm a sales professional. And that's the difference between good and bad.
And I think of it as it's matchmaking in my view, and maybe it's overly simplistic, but I feel like the best salespeople I've seen are really excellent matchmakers because they spend the time to understand both sides of a relationship, of a match, right? They look for my product, my service, my company. What do we have? What do we offer? And it's got unique characteristics and values and benefits, and some things about it are good and bad, et cetera. And who's out there in the market? What are they looking for? What do they need? What kind of problems are they trying to solve? And when they see a fit and can put those things together and explain it to both sides to bring teams of people together who don't know each other, right? Who don't realize that they have a lot in common because of a common problem and solution, that it's tremendous value. That doesn't happen on its own, right? Lots of people today, we like to think that it happens through, I just read a website and find the product I want and I order it on Amazon and I'm done. Okay. And again, maybe for commodities. That does, right? But for the kinds of things that we're doing in this space where there is no such thing as a commodity, you can't just go buy a digital twin. There's a lot of value in that matchmaking, in finding those relationships and making them happen, I think.
Yeah, Jonathan, we have a gentleman that works on my team, and he's used the statement multiple times that he doesn't sell PLM services. He doesn't sell digital engineering services. He sells trust. And that's his view, right? He needs the customer, the prospect, to trust him, to trust his matchmaking ability, to trust his knowledge of what skills and assets we have as an organization, what areas we are uniquely qualified to help with, what areas are a little bit of a stretch and maybe we shouldn't be. Those are the sort of things that he is trying to convey to his customer base so that they can use him in that regard. So does the sales guy, is he going to be as technical and as knowledgeable as the technical team? He's not. Just the way it is, And so sometimes, particularly when it's a technical sale or a technical discussion, you can get frustrated that I've got to go through this, this person that doesn't have that level of knowledge just to get to the people that do have that level of knowledge. But let me tell you why that's sometimes important. So I'll tell you a little story. I was a pre-sales technical guy, and I would do lots of demos for a particular software that we worked with. And I was pretty good at doing these demos.
I saw your demos, Derek. You were excellent at demos.
The software wasn't the greatest, but I could make it look pretty good. And I would get done with the demo, and let's say it went well and the customer was going to move forward, and they would often tell the salesperson that we want Derek to do the implementation. I am the last guy that you should want to do the implementation.
That's not true. That's not true.
Okay.
I hear what you're saying, but that's not true.
The point is, there was a lot of other people in our organization that were the perfect fit, the right person, had the right knowledge to do that implementation. And the salesperson, being that liaison between the customer and the project team, he could convey that to the customer that, I'm glad you like Derek. However, let me introduce you to these 5 other people because you have this specific need, and we have this guy that came from that industry or knows this or is currently doing this on another project. And so, the sales guy doesn't know all of the technical answers, but he is aware of the team that he has behind him and what it takes to bring them to bear. I mean, if we're going to rate the value of the sales team based on their ability to do the technical work, then why aren't we rating the manager of the Yankees on his ability to hit home runs? I mean, that's not his job. His job isn't his job is to know who can hit home runs, to put them in the right position to hit home runs, to get the right people on the team to do that. But his job isn't to hit the home runs. His job is to organize the team together. So don't be upset that your sales guy isn't the most knowledgeable person, that you call him with a very technical question and he's like, I don't know the answer, but I'll get back to you. That's not his job to know the answer. His job is to know who I can go to get the answer, and how do I get them put in the right position to give you the answer to help you out the best.
Without a doubt. I was just going to say, and you would not ask any of the technical resources about the business side of the equation. How is this going to be good for my particular industry? How's this going to keep us ahead of the competition, et cetera? They're not focused on that. They're focused on selling or basically solving the technical problem.
Right.
The thing I was going to add is it reminded me of a conversation I had with a customer I was particularly frustrated with about this topic because they did not want to work with a salesperson. And it was actually a salesperson I had a lot of respect for, and I thought they were adding a lot of value. And I don't know where it came from, probably head trash from dealing with a bad salesperson years ago or whatever. But this customer I was working with, they like to travel a lot and go lots of places, and they loved working with a concierge when they went to a hotel in a new place, that sort of thing. And I challenged it with it. I was like, I find this so ironic. You really don't want to work with this salesperson, but yet you get the value of a concierge when you travel. You will hire someone to help you find the right match for the best restaurant or the thing you want to do or tour you want to go, whatever. But in this other space, you don't get it. You don't see the value of this person who understands what's out there and can bring you the right things.
That's a great analogy and a great jumping off point to like, if we've gotten people past the, okay, or at least open your mind, maybe salespeople aren't the worst people in the world. At least not all of them.
Definitely not.
Derek and I are very nice. So if we can move people past that, or at least open their mind, and we're talking about, let's frame it as your salesperson as a concierge. Okay, so how do you get the best value out of your salesperson? Like, for instance, before the sale, like what are they bringing to what should you be asking them? What are they bringing to the conversation at that point?
So I think this goes to topics that we've talked about in the past on the podcast. And there is a level of business and process consulting that I think the salespeople can bring to bear. So I'm not suggesting that they're going to architect your PLM or your MES system, but to understand at a non-technical level, what business problem are you trying to solve? What benefits are you looking for? What ROI are you trying to calculate? And they can take that information and keep in mind that they're likely working or have worked with dozens of other companies in your same industry who had the same requirements and tried similar things. And they can share with you what they've seen and what has worked. So you say that, we want to do project X and it needs to be done in 3 months, and here's our cost target. And they've seen this done a million times, and no one has ever done project X in 3 months. It's just never happened.
At that cost target.
And so they can share some of that experience with you. Now, again, they're not the technical guys. They can't get into why Project X's always take longer and that sort of thing. That is for the technical team. But they can start to share some of that with you and start to set the right perspective. They're giving you some value in the experience that they have in doing similar things. I think that's one of the things that they can absolutely help with, is trying to just level set on what we're trying to do and what is the right approach. They may challenge you with, we had another customer that also wanted to do project X or option X. And when they did it, they later found out that that wasn't exactly what they wanted because of these things. And so they ended up doing this. Is that maybe really what that is what we're looking for? You're right. That is what we're looking for.
So you can look to your salesperson for their experience, good and bad, right? Because a lot of times the best lessons are taught by mistakes. If you as a company can avoid making mistakes because you can learn through your salesperson that other companies have made those mistakes, then that saves you money and time.
Right.
So their industry knowledge, their best practices, their experience in doing similar projects.
Well, it reminds me of a problem we've talked about in other podcast episodes, totally unrelated to this topic, but about how technology can mask the real issues around people or process or things like that. Because when we get into this space, lots of things look like a technology problem to start with. And this reminds me of that same thing where a customer wants to dive into the technology project and they've got questions about it and they think they need to talk to the technical person. But to your point, Derek, the first thing they need to do is really understand the business problem they're trying to solve with technology. And sometimes they've jumped to a technical solution or a technology solution before they really understood the business problem. And they've maybe misunderstood the business problem, misdiagnosed it, or misproposed the technical solution to that business problem. And that salesperson has probably seen that before, right? And can help at that level, to your point.
Right. Yeah. And not only seeing the business problem, but also seeing the sales and purchasing process. That's something that a salesperson can help with as well. So, a sales guy will often ask early on, and the answer is always the same, what's your budget? And the answer is always either we don't know or I'm not telling you. And you think the sales guy's asking that question because he's saying, well, I'm going to maximize. If their budget's 500,000, I bet my bid's going to be like 497. And maybe
back to the coin operated, right?
I've actually, I got a story about that.
But I'll tell you really what the motivation often for that question is I want to understand how we're going to get there, right? So I know that if I go to someone and they call me and they say, we're having this problem and we need to fix it. And I say, what's your budget? And they say, oh, no, we can't talk about that. I might know what those projects tend to cost. And so when they say to me, well, our budget, it's got to be sub 20K. I'm like, I'm telling you right now that doesn't work. You're not going to get that for that price. Or I say to them, have you guys looked at the ROI here? Because I know that this project's going to cost some threshold, that there's going to be someone in finance or someone in IT that's going to make us go through an ROI study, make sure that we know what we're doing before we spend the money. And so I'm asking those questions so that I can kind of help prepare them for that sort of thing. We've talked to customers. We were talking to one not too long ago in the aerospace industry, and they've got a pretty significant upgrade in their future. They said they'd like to start in Q1 of next year. Here we are in July almost. And they'd like to start in Q1 of next year, and it will probably be a multi-million-dollar project for them. Well, as a sales professional who has seen the process of a aerospace company buying multi-million-dollar projects, I know if we want to start in Q1, there's paperwork to get signed. There are, vendor qualifications that need to happen. There are proposals that we need to start thinking about, at least at a high level. And so I'm not asking those questions necessarily to try to maximize my proposal and get the most out of it. Sometimes it's just let's everybody level set and understand what the process is going to be here. Because if you come to me in January and say you're ready to start talking upgrade, you're not upgrading until September. Because I just know how long these things take in organizations of your size and complexity.
This reminds me of the concierge thing again, right? Which is you go to the concierge and you need to know, like, well, what are you looking for, right? Like, oh, I'm staying at the beach. I would like a tour of the beach, right? Do you want like a 2-hour tour of a couple of blocks around here? Are you looking for all afternoon? Or were you hoping for like a multi-day because you're staying with us for a week? I don't know. The same thing in any kind of consulting project. Right. I need help on my PLM roadmap. Right. Are you looking for next 10 minutes? I give you a few pointers. Are you looking for a couple hour phone call and I can understand a little more and give you some more directed advice? Or would you like a report and an engagement, an interview, and, how in depth are we talking about? And, you need to understand that. To your point, Derek, I mean, it's not like the question is just like, well, how big can my deal be?
Yeah. Well, and you think about, I was going to say, how does the concierge, how does he have the ability to provide those options and offer those different ideas? And a lot of it is because he knows what's out there, and he knows, maybe he's even experienced, a travel agent, for example, often will take the cruises or the vacations that they're then selling so they can speak to, here's what happens on that. And so how does that parallel to the sales guy? Our sales teams are at all the industry conferences. They're listening to the keynotes of the vendors about what the futures of the product looks like. They're going to the analysts conventions and hearing where the industry's going. A lot of times the technical team isn't doing that because they're focused on the technology, a specific piece of the technology. So when you're looking for someone to talk about what other options are out there, where's the industry heading, what are the best practices, what case studies have you seen, how have other people done this? The sales professionals can often connect one customer to another customer. Oh, I was at a trade show. This company did a case study on the main stage about this. We need to get you connected. So that level of experience to be able to offer those options is something that can be invaluable. And there's really nobody else in the delivery organization that has that kind of knowledge.
Well, and I was going to say, like, even the budget question, you're tying this back to the concierge. You know what? I want to go out for Italian tonight. Okay, how much do you want to spend? Like, or how much?
Right.
It's not. He's not trying to maximize your spend. He's saying, like, okay, just give me an idea. Do you want the $3 signs? Do you want the $5 signs? Like, you going for super nice, or you just want a good family Italian meal? Right. How many people are you taking? Like, that sort of thing.
And to Derek's point earlier, right? it would be much smarter to ask the concierge that question than to go to the chefs of the 5 Italian restaurants closest to the hotel, right? and really frustrate them by asking them what they're planning to serve tonight. No, it wouldn't make sense, right? Don't do that. That's not a good idea.
Yeah.
So if you're talking to your salespeople, then as your concierge, and you're having them, like, you're leaning into their industry knowledge, and they have some level of technical knowledge. They do, because they've been talking to customers. They know what works, what doesn't work, that sort of thing. Best practices, even to Derek's point, the process of purchasing, they're usually fairly informed on. What about after the sale, or basically during and after the sale? So you've engaged, you've actually, the salesperson is now, you've built a relationship with them, and you're either using the product or you're in the middle of the services project. Where's the value that they're bringing there then? Because I don't think it ends with the sale.
I want to highlight something that's maybe in between. It can happen before, but as we get into the sale, that I don't want to forget about. And I've seen this multiple times on the delivery side, right? And I think probably a lot of folks listening to this podcast, when they think about the salespeople in their organization, maybe they've seen the same thing, where that matchmaking goes both ways, and the salesperson can help advocate for sometimes what's a fuzzy match with the customer, right? Where they can say, look, the customer, I believe, is looking for this, and I know that's not exactly what we offer, what we do, whatever it is, but it's so close. We should look at this. Do we think we can do that? Can we offer value in that area? Or they're asking for something I've never seen or heard of before. Do we think we could do that? Is it a good fit? There's a lot of value in that too, and that can happen, like you said, before or even during the engagement or the sales process or whatever it might be. I don't want to forget that one, but your question was a good one.
That's exactly what I was going to say as one of the things the salesperson can do during and after the sale was the customer advocate. And I was just like you, I was going to tie it to the pre-sale also, because there's advocate that can happen there. Let me tell you something, a dirty secret about technical people. Technical people like to do stuff they know how to do. They know the answer. They know the process. They know all the steps. Those are what technical people like to do. So if we remove the sales guy complete from the occasion situation and just went to the technical people, sometimes the answers you'll get are, that's not a good idea. We shouldn't do that. I don't think that's the right way to do it. And where the sales guy can even be an advocate, even in pre-sales, is to pump his team up, to encourage them, to let them know that there's a lot of potential here. I know that hey, delivery team, I know what I'm asking you to do is going to be really difficult, and it's something we've not done before. It's a little bit out of your comfort zone. But if we do this right, look what happens next and what we get into next with this customer. And so they are actually acting as an advocate, certainly before the sale. And then as we roll into the actual project, they can continue to act as an advocate. Remember, we talked about compensation models earlier. That sales guy needs this thing to work, to progress, to succeed. We have to hit milestones. We have to hit deliverables. In most cases, the sales guy needs that to happen. So he's going to continue to act as an advocate. There may be cases when the project management organization or some of the technical people are very black and white about something in the project. They didn't say they wanted to do this. It's time for a change order. Here's the only option. Whereas the sales guy can kind of advocate for the customer and say, well, hold on. If we give a little here, there's maybe an opportunity for us in the future. Things that without that salesperson in there, it becomes a very transactional and very black and white sort of relationship that maybe doesn't benefit the customer.
You're right. The salespeople can capture the context that we've talked about in previous conversations. So they have a bigger view of the problem and the solution than the technical folks might necessarily have.
And they can bring that to challenge that technical team or the product or whatever it is. And that's actually healthy on both sides of the equation, right? That's the thing I wanted to point out is, yes, on the customer side, that's valuable because it can help make that match. But on the organization side, it's also helpful. Sometimes that's what leads to innovation and new ideas, right? Because that salesperson sees, guys, I don't know if you're seeing that quite right. Or I heard this from them and, the technical team wasn't necessarily going to hear that because they're not in all those same conversations.
That's right. And the technical team sometimes needs those challenges in order to progress and move on to the next level. Again, a lot of technical people are risk averse. We want to do what we know how to do. I mean, on our team, a lot of them, they're engineers, they're mechanical engineers, they're electrical engineers. We don't just say, I think it'll hold. We go through the studies and the math and and we over-engineer it. And so I remember a case when I was in industry and I worked for a medical devices organization, and we made oxygen devices, respiratory equipment. And I remember one of our executives coming down to the engineering team and telling us, there's got to be a way for us to we had this product called an oxygen concentrator, takes room air, filters out the nitrogen and produces oxygen. There's got to be a way for an individual to fill their oxygen bottles that they need when they go to the mall or to the store. They can fill them at home. Instead of waiting every week for the delivery van to show up and give you new oxygen bottles, and if you run out, you can't go anywhere. There's got to be a way to fill them at home. And every single engineer, myself included, told this gentleman that is the silliest thing I've ever heard. We're gonna fill these high PSI oxygen bottles, high pressure, and elderly people all together, and we're going to give that to someone to put in their home. That is a stupid idea. And this executive walked out of the room and said, let me know how it goes, because I just sold 100 of them. And you know what? Yep. We figured it out. We found a way to put, positive lock couplers so that you couldn't start the filling process until it was assured that the tank was locked, pressure monitors and regulators to make sure that nothing could be overpressured, even if the guy left his oxygen bottle on the fill station for 5 days in a row. We found a way to do all that stuff, and we ended up selling them. But it took that challenge, because as engineers, there was way too much risk in that. It took someone at the business level to say to us that there's an opportunity out there that you're missing because you're just thinking about what you know, not what's possible.
It's an interesting dichotomy of engineers. The wanting to do what's safe and known and is working versus, God, I love a challenge. Okay, I can do it. And being able to figure it out. But no, you're right. It's the customer advocacy works. It definitely works both ways. And it also works throughout the process, right? Because the relationship, generally speaking, between a customer and a supplier, the salesperson is usually your point of contact. They're your account manager. And they don't change with the same regularity that, the technical resources may be on this project, that project, and they may do this piece of your project, but not the whole piece. Versus your salesperson doesn't usually change. So if you have a problem, you have a question, you have a need, that's usually the person best suited to serve you because they know your business, they know the relationship.
That's right. And the salesperson being that single point of contact is certainly the single point of contact for the entire delivery organization that's behind him, but it can be a single point of contact for the industry. So my delivery organization may do these things.
Right.
And you may have needs that are related, but we don't do. But guess what? I'm in the industry. I'm at the trade shows. I'm talking to the people that have the booth next to us, and I know what they do. And so you can come to me, and even though my organization can't fulfill your need, I can introduce you to people that can. I can tell you about, we have this other customer that had a similar need, and this is who they used, and they seemed very happy with them because I've got that knowledge out there, and I've got those contacts.
Right.
That's what every salesperson wants, is they want, when there's a problem, that the customer picks up the phone and calls a salesperson and says, I don't know if you're the guy, let me tell you what I got. And then certainly when we are the guy, that makes us very happy. But even when we're not, the fact that, remember what I talked about earlier about trusted advisor, the fact that I'm the guy that you feel that you can come to and I can get you an answer. Maybe it's not my organization, but I can get you an answer.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot to that relationship that the salesperson can bring, right? And that trust is the important part of it. It's information, like you talked about. It's education. It's options. It's other relationships that you can be introduced to. There are so many pieces of that that add value throughout the whole process. Right. That you don't want to miss out on that.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not that every salesperson offers that, but the really good ones do. And it's important to recognize that value, right? That it's not like, it's just part of them doing their job. Okay, it is. It is their job. But there's a difference between somebody who does that really well and somebody who, and then there's somebody who doesn't do it.
Right. In our organization, the team that I have the privilege of leading, we have a monthly sales meeting where each of the salespeople are asked to give a little bit of a presentation. And the first few minutes of that presentation is business. It's numbers, it's, pipeline, it's that sort of stuff. And then the rest of our 3-hour call is, what cool stuff are you doing? What cool stuff are you working on? And there is no discussion about they had a $500,000 budget and I got them to bite for $497. Those aren't the discussions. The discussions are, this customer had this problem and here's how we're solving it, and look at the neat stuff. And then the other sales guy says, I got something like that going on too. Tell me more. And so now they know of this option, or we were asked to do this thing and the delivery team said it wasn't really possible. And then we looked at it from a different angle and we found there was a way to do it. And then the rest of the sales team says, that's a good tool to have in my bag to know that we can do that sort of stuff. And so, they have a level of knowledge that, again, they're not the most technical people. Some of them are very technical, but they're not going to be as technical as the senior people and the delivery side. They're not. That's not their job.
Right.
My Yankees manager analogy, that's not their job. Their job is to have a variety of information at a high level across a lot of things and know where the industry's going, know how the process works. And if you utilize them for that, you have a lot of knowledge at your disposal that if you just kind of kick them to the side and say, I'll let you know when I need a quote, you're going to be missing some of that stuff.
And I want to add to that, because as we're talking about relationship, there is another important piece of that a salesperson can serve the role of being that single point of contact that is available, that is ready to serve that relationship over time, right? And Jen, you brought this up earlier, sort of tangentially about, sometimes technical people can change, or different technical people on the project or delivery that you need, or whatever it might be. And the same's true if you're selling a product on the support help desk. All of those resources can change about maybe the thing that you're buying, the service or product. But the salesperson can stay consistent. Mm-hmm. They can be the person who understands that context over time and also knows how to reach out for the right people. We talked about the matchmaking earlier, right? Who are they grabbing? Is it this technical person or that person or the person on the help desk, or where are they? But I'm going to speak very selfishly for myself, right? So my role at Razorleaf is chief architect. I spend a lot of time talking to people about technology, meeting up with business problems and how it can solve an issue. And, I can talk deep technically about some things and I look at business problems, but my time is very limited in terms of speaking with different customers. I think the most valuable thing that our sales team does for me is they know when to bring me into a conversation, when I can add value, when it's a waste of my time, when it's a waste of the customer's time, when it's not right. But if they weren't the single point of contact on those relationships with their customers, they wouldn't be able to see that, and they wouldn't know how to reach for me, for my colleagues, for the people that work in our service team and our product team. By doing that, they're making all of this much more smooth, because when the customer needs something, they're there, and the customer doesn't have to figure it out, right? They reach out to someone who knows their context and say, look, I need help on this, I need help on that, I'm having a problem, whatever it is. That single point of contact has a ton of value, in my view.
I think you're right. And it's interesting because you touched on not only their value to the customer, but also their value to you and to technical resources is to, again, protect you guys from being pulled in at times that you don't need to be pulled in.
Well, and technical people will say dumb stuff too.
Well, there's that.
I've been there, right? I say it and I mean it as, mea culpa. Sure, I've been in conversations where you say things, it's like, that's not the relevant thing to say right now, or now is not the time to bring that up, or this isn't the audience, or whatever it might be. And, there's a lot that matchmaker can do on all sides of the equation.
So I want to be conscious of our time, as always. It's been a really good conversation. Matter of fact, I don't even feel the need to summarize it all that much, because you both just did very nice summaries as far as the value of sales people to the customer and to the technical team. I think the final wrap I'll put on that is that it's inherent on both the customer and the technical team to recognize that value and seek out that value from your salesperson. Ask them if they're not asking ask them for those things. Hey, ask them for connections. Hey, have you had a customer that's done this before? Have you, do you know somebody that can provide this? And that's because that's a big piece of what I do here at Razorleaf is create the partnerships. And Derek, when you were talking about the monthly sales meetings, we discussed that too. So one of our other colleagues, customer might benefit from partners that we've worked on with another salesperson. It's, we all work together. It's to serve both the customer and the technical teams. So
that's the as you're wrapping up, Jen, that's the advice I wanted to offer to our listeners is challenge your salespeople and recognize that they provide value and ask them for that value. And if you have a company you work with or a software you work with or something where you feel like you're not getting that value out of that relationship, challenge it, right? I mean, it's within your rights and it's within your responsibilities to your organization to ask for that value. And
Jonathan,
because
I wanted to add to that. Ask for it. I would even say demand it. Demand that this is how. But recognize also that there are personalities involved. Mm-hmm. And just because the salesperson that's assigned to you that you're working with is not giving you the things that you need, that doesn't mean that all salespeople are bad. You may have to ask for someone else. You may have to remind that person of what you're looking for. Don't just eliminate the salesperson because you had a bad experience with a particular individual or one. People have different personalities. They operate in different ways. We find that in our organization that we'll assign a salesperson to a particular opportunity or a prospect. And after some time, you'll realize there's just not a match. It's just their behavior, their attitude, their personality is just so different than this guy. And we put another salesperson in there and it goes beautifully. And it's nobody's wrong. They're just different.
Right.
Right.
And we can learn, us salespeople. We have the ability to learn too and grow. So we can get better. But no, I think that those are all good points. And hopefully, our listeners have been with us through this entire process and now have a little bit different perspective on salespeople and what you can expect from them. There's definitely a value add there.
I want to tie something together too. So I don't think we really mentioned it in this episode, but we did another episode about RFPs.
Oh, right.
And it reminds me of, it's like counterpoint a little bit, right? Because in that episode, we were talking about how RFPs can sometimes be sterile. And some of the downside is that you don't have context and don't have a relationship. And in this episode, we're talking about salespeople and the value of the relationship. So it's an interesting counterpoint. If people haven't heard that episode, it might be worth going back to that one because I think these connect a bit.
Oh, I agree with that. And I want to thank Jonathan. I want to thank you for being here to co-host with me, and Derek as our valued guest. Happy to have you back again.
Thank you.
And all of our listeners, if you have any questions on this particular episode or suggestions for another one, please reach out to us on social media. You can find the podcast on either our website or any of the places where you get other podcasts. We're pretty much everywhere these days. Just reach out, be part of the conversation. We enjoy hearing from you. And until next time, stay sharp.
Thanks, everybody.
See you guys.
Another good conversation, Derek.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here and listening to this episode of Stay Sharp with Razorleaf. If you have any questions or you want to learn how to work better with your salesperson, we'd love to have that conversation. Just leave us a comment on our post or send us an email to podcast@razorleaf.com. We might even call you in for a follow-on episode. We appreciate all the feedback we get from our listeners. So if you like this podcast, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform or on our YouTube channel. Until next time, stay sharp.